ऐसे स्कूल जो बच्चों को फन लर्निंग, प्लेफुल लर्निंग, एक्टिविटी बेस्ड लर्निंग और डिस्कवरी बेस्ड लर्निंग का एनवायरनमेंट दें। बच्चे जैसे जैसे क्लास में आगे बढ़े उनमें ज्यादा सीखने की भावना का विकास हो।
माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के सपने को साकार कर रहा है CSC बाल विद्यालय, जिसकी शुरुआत 6 जुलाई 2020 को हुई थी। ये विद्यालय आधुनिक तकनीक के माध्यम से नर्सरी, LKG और UKG स्तरों पर 3 से 6 साल के बच्चों को मनोरंजक तरीके से शिक्षा उपलब्ध करवा रही है।
यहाँ पर कई सारी चीजें हैं, कई तकनीकें हैं, जैसे कि प्रोजेक्टर है, हमारा एलेक्सा है और टैबलेट्स वगैरह हैं, तो उनसे बच्चे अच्छे से खेलते खेलते ही सीख रहे हैं। CSC बाल विद्यालय में बच्चों ने सीखा लव टू लर्न, सीखने से प्यार है उनको पढ़ने से, वरना बच्चे ना आलस करते हैं लिखने में, उनको लिखना नहीं है। अब बच्चे खुशी खुशी लिख रहे हैं, टैब में अल्फाबेट्स हैं या काउंटिंग है, कुछ भी है जो बच्चे बड़े चाव से कर रहे हैं।
इसके अलावा बच्चों को कलरफुल प्रिंट मटेरियल, लर्निंग वॉल सहित कई प्रकार की सुविधाएं उपलब्ध करवाई जाती हैं। जॉयफुल लर्निंग की यही प्रक्रिया इन विद्यालयों को अन्य विद्यालयों से अलग बनाती है। CSC बाल विद्यालय का सिलेबस भी NCERT प्री स्कूल गाइडलाइंस और पूर्व प्राथमिक अनुभवी शिक्षकों की सलाह के आधार पर तैयार किया गया है। इन विद्यालयों में ऑगमेंटेड रियलिटी कंटेंट का प्रावधान किया गया है।
CSC और IIT दिल्ली मिलकर के तकनीक के आधार पर किस प्रकार से छोटे बच्चों को शिक्षा दी जाए, इसके लिए हम लोग कार्य कर रहे हैं। इसके तहत ही हम लोगों ने कुछ मोबाइल बेस्ड ऐप्स बनाए हैं और उनसे रिलेटेड करिकुलम बनाया है। बच्चों को कैसे पढ़ाया जाए, इस पे हमने कुछ नई तकनीक बनाई है और ये हम बाल विद्यालयों के माध्यम से बच्चों तक पहुंचाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं।
बच्चों को क्वालिटीपूर्ण वातावरण और शिक्षा मिले, इसके लिए प्रत्येक 25 छात्रों पर कम से कम 1 से 2 प्रशिक्षक और सहायक का प्रावधान किया गया है। इन विद्यालयों में शिक्षकों का कौशल विकास भी होता है। इसके लिए CSC अकादमी की डिजी पाठशाला पोर्टल पर पाठ्यक्रम भी तैयार किया गया है। बच्चों के अभिभावक भी शिक्षा के प्रति इस अप्रोच से संतुष्ट हैं।
पेपर लेस है, पहले बच्चों को कॉपी पे ये सब करवाया जाता है, बैग लेस है, जो कि मेन इशू रहा है कि बच्चों का बैग कम से कम किया जाए।
इन बाल विद्यालयों में बच्चों का कोई टेस्ट नहीं लिया जाता, बल्कि उनका आकलन उनके डेली क्लास के आधार पर किया जाता है।
एजुकेशन बहुत अच्छी होने की वजह से मैंने अपनी दोनों बेटियों का भविष्य यही उज्जवल समझा।
आज देश भर में विद्यालयों की संख्या 1200 से भी ज्यादा हो गई है, जहां 2000 से भी ज्यादा ट्रेन टीचर्स शिक्षा की अलख जगा रहे हैं।
बच्चों का मन, उनका मस्तिष्क वैज्ञानिक और तार्किक तरीके से सोचना शुरू करे, उनमें मैथमेटिकल थिंकिंग और साइंटिफिक टेम्परामेंट विकसित हो, ये बहुत आवश्यक है।
माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के आह्वान पर ग्रामीण भारत के प्री स्कूलों में CSC बाल विद्यालय आधुनिक और बेहतर शिक्षा की नई बयार लेकर आया है। आने वाले समय में ये विद्यालय अभिभावकों और बच्चों के बीच और ज्यादा लोकप्रिय होंगे। खेल खेल में बच्चे सीखेंगे, कल के ये सूरज चमकेंगे, पूरे देश में उजाला फैलाएंगे, एक नया भारत बनाएंगे।
गर्व है हमें कि हमने आज जंग जीत ली,
जो बची है वो भी कल को
जीत लेंगे जी कभी। CSC मेरी पहचान।
तो आप में से कोई भी ऐसा नहीं है जो अनभिज्ञ हो बाल विद्यालय के बारे में। All of you are well aware of what the Bal Vidyalayas are. It was just a video to remind ourselves of what we are up to and how big a challenge it is for us. You know, we are very fortunate to have among us today our keynote speaker, Professor M. Pant. Professor Pant has a PhD in computational physics along with a professional law degree. So he's both a lawyer as well as a professor. And he has more than 80 publications in various research journals. He has also been the Pro Vice Chancellor of IGNOU. So you can understand how fortunate we are to have him among ourselves. I would like to invite him to the stage and to take a seat. And I'll request Dr. Gupta to escort him. Sir, we are very fortunate to have you today with us and to listen to your thoughts about this. And we are also very fortunate to have young children from CSC Bal Vidyalaya Uttam Nagar, which is headed by Dr. Vipin. So I think this is a good combination. आज हम लोग fortunate है कि हमारे पास बहुत ही छोटे बच्चे आए हैं उत्तम नगर बाल विद्यालय से और हमारे पास शीर्षस्थ व्यक्ति भी हैं शिक्षा से जुड़े हुए. तो ये अच्छा होगा अगर इनका वेलकम जो है वो बच्चे करें. So let me invite Yashika and Madhav from Uttam Nagar Bal Vidyalaya. And with both of them, our teachers, Bharti ma'am and Ananya ma'am. Thank you to Yashika, Madhav, and Bharti ma'am and Ananya ma'am. So as per the schedule, we were supposed to have lighting of the lamp. हम लोगों की संस्कृति में परंपरा है दीप प्रज्वलन का किसी कार्य को शुरू करने के पहले. तो मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा ऋषिकेश सर को कि आप भी आगे आ जाएं और दीप प्रज्वलन पंत सर के साथ मिलकर करें. डॉक्टर गुप्ता, प्लीज कम फॉरवर्ड. और मुझे लगता है कि इस दीप प्रज्वलन में भी अगर एक बच्चा आ जाए तो अच्छा रहेगा. मे बी यशिका को वापस बुला सकते हैं. तमसो मां ज्योतिर्गमया वैदिक मंत्र है कि अंधकार से प्रकाश की तरफ हमें लेके चले. और मुझे लगता है हम सब लोग जो इस हॉल में हैं कहीं ना कहीं सी प्रार्थना के साथ आए हैं. थैंक यू सो मच.
रख लेते हैं।
बच्चों का रोना भी अच्छा है। मुझे याद आता है कि कृष्ण के जन्म पे जो भजन गाया जाता है उसमें कहते हैं रोदन ठाना, तो कृष्ण के रोने की आवाज है वो लोगों को बहुत अच्छी लग रही है। सो देयर इज नथिंग टू बी वरीड।
कोई बात नहीं, आगे मैं कौन है? मैंने कहा मैं कोई अनुचित बात तो कहूँगा नहीं, होने दीजिए। हाँ, श्योर।
So now we are all eager to listen to Professor Pant. Sir, over to you.
Thank you. So let me begin by first thanking Professor Jyoti Kumar for leading all these initiatives and Team CSC for inviting me here. I am indeed very, very happy to be here. He mentioned about me in the introduction, but what he didn't mention is I am a part of the IIT system as well. I have a PhD from Roorkee University, which is now in IIT. I have taught for about 10 years at IIT Kanpur, and I've been a member of the board of management of this IIT for about 6 years. So मैं IIT का पूरा एकदम अभिन्न अंग हूँ, अच्छी तरह से अंदर बाहर दोनों तरह से जानता हूँ। मैं IIT की क्रिटिसिज्म भी कर सकता हूँ, आप घबराइए नहीं। पर मुझे सबसे ज़्यादा खुशी हुई है छोटे बच्चों को देख के। आपको बहुत ताज्जुब होगा, मैं इस समय छोटे बच्चों से बहुत रिलेट कर सकता हूँ, क्योंकि मैं देख रहा हूँ वो भी इस दुनिया को जानने के बारे में उत्सुक हैं, उनके अंदर जिज्ञासा है, कुछ amazed at the wonder is how this world works. I am also trying to do the same thing, understanding how this world works, except that I know a little more mathematics, etc. to see, but everything in the world cannot be described by mathematics. The very famous physicist Stephen Hawking, who was very brilliant, etc., people went to him and said, "Sir, you are so brilliant, you know everything. Is there anything which even you find difficult?" And he says, "I find it very difficult to understand human beings. There is no differential equation which I can write and I can fit the parameters and get what the human being will do," and so on. तो ये बात है। और जो सबसे important चीज है कि the number of questions that they have, and important questions, interesting questions, unanswerable questions, which we grown-up ask them to shut up, is something which we shouldn't be doing. Children ask hundreds of questions a day. In fact, I've followed that research. 4-year-old children ask about 400 questions per day. The parents are very happy to send them to school, that the school will teach them how to stop asking questions. And once they go to school, they stop asking questions. I've done this very often. The more grown-up an audience is, the less the number of questions for them. The younger they are, there's it. And we are talking of Bal Vidyalaya and so on. We have this notion that we have to teach only young children. No, we have to teach a whole lot of grown-ups as well. And therefore, learning is not only for children. And some people use this phrase, joyful learning. You don't have to say joyful learning. Learning is joyful. If it is not joyful, it is not learning. It is something else. It is conscription, it is being in military, it is being whatever. But learning by definition is joyful, and no matter what your age, once you know how to do something which you didn't know earlier, there is a great element of joy. It can be mobile phone, it can be connecting on a video call, it can be anything you learn is itself joyful. This is what human nature is. I'll give you examples. I was under this lockdown for so long, and one of the consequences was that I ate a lot of spinach, because that was available all around and every other meal was spinach. Now, I started asking myself, and I'm asking all of you, how many can answer why is spinach so rich in iron? ये कोई स्टील मिल नहीं है, वेदांता का नहीं है, टिस्को का नहीं है, टेल्को का नहीं है, इज द सेम लैंड. एंड वो एप्पल ट्री है तो वो विटामिन सी बना देता है, वो ऑरेंज ट्री है तो वो कुछ बना देता है. यू हैव ह्यूज मैन्युफैक्चरिंग अराउंड यू. Another very interesting thing which came up, and इन्होंने संस्कारों की बात करी है, and I will obviously then build on that. So one of the things which is very popular in Indian society is the Mahamrityunjay mantra. Now, the Mahamrityunjay mantra talks about the metaphor of a kakadi just falling off peacefully without that. And then I started asking, so why is it that ripe fruits fall and raw fruits don't? How many of us can answer that question to a precise degree? No. So there is a lot to learn across life. And that is why this Bal Vidyalaya is so important. That वो जो अभी present day society कहता है कि सवाल पूछना बंद करो. If you continue to do this, there will be a lot more today, and it will be a lot fulfilling life. People, because they first made learning a kind of a torture, and in fact, if you look at young children, I relate very much now. You see, lots of 4-year-olds in my family are my friends. They are very happy talking to me rather than talking to their parents and so on. They are full of joy, excitement. Everything is a wonder. As we grow up, we try to seize all that. In fact, even if you look at early childhood children, up to class 5, 8, etc., they are all very excited. Everything new that they learn is there. Once they get a little beyond class 8, they will ask, "Ye IIT mein aayega ki nahi?" If it is not going to come into IIT, then they are not interested. So this is where we spoil them. It's natural curiosity there. The important thing, and I said this on the way also, is Bal Vidyalaya should now move on to get them to be active self-learners. So we are talking of teachers 20 to this, get them to be able, and the teachers should guide them towards better self-learning. And I will give you why. The amount of things to learn about the world is so much that you can never have a teacher for every one of these things. And therefore, exploring yourself, becoming a self-learner is a very important aspect. A very well-known futurist called Thomas Frey has said, if we try to insert a teacher between ourselves and everything that we want to learn, we will never be able to learn all the things that we want to learn. Keeping Professor Jyoti Kumar's exhortation in mind, he said, we're talking about between English and Hindi and managing that, but I'm also talking about modernity and sanskar. So the balancing act is English, Hindi, modernity, sanskar, and so on. So first, he asked about English or Hindi and your comfort level. आप हिंदी में ज़्यादा सहज हैं कि अंग्रेजी में. पहले तो आप इसको भी देखिए मत, इंग्लिश वर्सेस हिंदी को. बहुत लोग देखते हैं अभी इंग्लिश वर्सेस हिंदी. आप ये मानिए कि ये दोनों भाषाएं और मुझे दोनों में समझने की ज़रूरत है. अगर आप कंप्यूटर फील्ड में आएंगे, जैसे मैं आया हूँ, मेरी पहली भाषा थी फोर्ट्रैन, फिर कोबॉल, फिर पास्कल, फिर सी, फिर जावा, ये आजकल पाइथन चल रही है, कल हैस्केल आएगी, जूलिया आएगी, कुछ आएगी. हम ये नहीं कहते कि भाई हम तो फोर्ट्रैन में पैदा हुए थे, हम फोर्ट्रैन ही करेंगे. इसी तरीके से आप भाषा को एक माध्यम समझिए, मीन्स ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन, एंड लर्न एज मेनी लैंग्वेजेस एज यू वांट. एंड there are dictionaries available, and now Google has an instant dictionary. So you don't even have to worry that the person must speak to you in Hindi or English or any other thing. And many of us are comfortable with English, a lot of them, including IITs teach in English. ये क्यों है? Why is IIT teaching in English today? It is thanks to Albert Einstein. Now, I am saying this deliberately to make it interesting. You would say it is thanks to the British rule and so on and so forth. But British rule tha. More recently, it is Einstein who is responsible for this. And I'm saying this deliberately to attract attention. So, you know, there was something called the Second World War. Second World War में जर्मनी एक तरफ था, बाकी लोग दूसरी तरफ थे. एंड जर्मनी ने एटॉमिक बॉम्ब करीब करीब बना लिया था. हिटलर वॉज टॉकिंग अबाउट इट एज द अल्टीमेट वेपन. दे हैड मेड प्लान्स कि कितना बॉम्ब चाहिए न्यूयॉर्क सिटी को डिस्ट्रॉय करने के लिए. Hitler was, Einstein was a Jew from Germany who had to leave Germany because of Hitler's this thing. So Einstein wrote a letter to that President Frederick Roosevelt that, look here, Germany is ready with a nuclear bomb. If you want to be okay, please do that. Till then, nuclear physics was theoretical. I am a theoretical physicist. Nuclear physics was purely theater. Einstein had that equation E is equal to mc square. But Einstein persuaded Roosevelt that go and do something. And then came what is called the Manhattan Project. And within the Manhattan Project, then the US made a bomb. They did something which is a questionable thing. They threw that bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but it established the non-supremacy of Hitler. But मान लीजिए हिटलर जीत गया होता तो क्या होता? तो ज्योति कुमार, हम, ऋषिकेश क्या कहते हैं? गुटेन मॉर्गन कहते। फिर क्या करते? जो राजा होता है उसी की भाषा करते। और आप लोगों को मैं पता नहीं कितने बार जो लोग पंजाब में हैं, पंजाब में द एल्डर जनरेशन knew Urdu but did not know Hindi. A lot of people, newspapers were in Urdu, they didn't know Hindi. And you may not have noticed, but I had noticed there's a very successful book called Sangam. In Sangam there's a dialogue where Raj Kapoor says, पंडित जी ठीक कहते थे हिंदी सीख लो, क्योंकि हिंदी में उसको चिट्ठी मिली तो उसको जाकर राजेंद्र कुमार से पढ़वानी पड़ी, क्योंकि उसको हिंदी नहीं आती थी, खाली उर्दू आती थी. So the point is that languages are used on the basis of effectiveness. आज इंग्लिश काम आ रही है, हम इंग्लिश सीख रहे हैं. अगर हिटलर जीत गया होता तो हम लोग गुटेन आबन कर रहे होते. और बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग चीज है, इंग्लिश को कई बार लोग समझते हैं कि ये बड़ी यूनिवर्सल. इंग्लिश की इंग्लैंड में कोई इज्जत नहीं थी, जैसे हमारे यहाँ हिंदी की इज्जत नहीं है, इंग्लिश की इंग्लैंड में कोई इज्जत नहीं थी. अगर आप कोई जानकार आदमी हैं तो आप लैटिन जानेंगे, ग्रीक जानेंगे, फ्रेंच जानेंगे. और अगर आपको थोड़ा बहुत एक्सपीरियंस हुआ है, अगर आपका लॉ से कहीं एक्सपीरियंस हुआ है, लॉ में सारे टर्म्स लैटिन के हैं. रेस जुडिकाटा, रेशियो डिसिडेंडी, ये वो कोई भी चीज है तो ये डॉक्टरी के पास चले जाइए, वो सब ग्रीक लगाएगा. आइटिस अगर आप लैटिन ग्रीक जानते हैं तो आधी डॉक्टरी आप सीख लेंगे, क्योंकि उसके सारे टर्म्स के माने लैटिन और ग्रीक. कंप्यूटर वाले लोग ये सब सीखे नहीं थे, वो बोरिंग नाम लेते हैं, इनपुट, आउटपुट, मिडलवेयर, हार्ड डिस्क, ये वो. ऐसा नहीं होता. अगर लैटिन सीख के आए होते तो फ्रंट कैमरा को कहते एंटीरियर कैमरा, बैक कैमरा को कहते पोस्टीरियर कैमरा. तो ये होता है. और यही डॉक्टरी करती, ये वकालत करती. सो द पॉइंट इज ट्रीट लैंग्वेज इज जस्ट ए टूल ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन. चाहे आज अगर पाइथन चल रही है तो हम पाइथन यूज कर रहे हैं, तो जहां इंग्लिश चलेगी वहां इंग्लिश यूज करेंगे, जहां हिंदी चलेगी वहां हिंदी करेंगे, जहां बंगाली चलेगी वहां बंगाली कर लेंगे. तो डोंट गेट sort of constrained by that language. And this is a very, very important thing, especially because now we are talking of multicultural thing. Everybody is going around the globe. And कहाँ क्या चीज की जरूरत पड़ेगी वो है. So इसी तरीके से मॉडर्निटी और संस्कृति की बात आती है. Modernity is what we have today, but sanskar is what we always had. And one of the things I want to really say is that yesterday was World Environment Day, विश्व पर्यावरण दिवस. तो आपको पता है कुछ दिनों पहले तक हमारी कोई एनवायरमेंटल कॉन्शियसनेस नहीं थी. We are not at all concerned with the environment, and this is the again difference between one model of development and the other model of perenniality, सनातन कहते हैं हम. So हमारे यहाँ फॉर एग्जाम्पल, क्योंकि इन्होंने ये छेड़ दिया है तो मुझे मौका मिल गया. हमारा पहला संस्कार ये है कि आप सुबह उठते हैं तो अपने हाथ को ऐसे कहते हैं. आपको कितने लोगों को पता है? कराग्रे बस्ते लक्ष्मी कर मध्य सरस्वती कर मूले से. क्या कहा उन्होंने? सरस्वती लक्ष्मी दोनों आपके हाथ में है, कोई दूसरा नहीं है जो कर रहा है, आपके हाथ में है. सुबह उठते ही आप सरस्वती लक्ष्मी दोनों याद करते हैं. ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. हम लोग कई बार पूजा करते हैं, सरस्वती की बात करते हैं, पर लक्ष्मी की भी करनी चाहिए. नमस्ते महामाये श्री पीठे से पूजिते शंख चक्र गदा हस्ते महालक्ष्मी नमोस्तुते, ये भी करना चाहिए. क्योंकि ये पुराना एक है कि सरस्वती और लक्ष्मी की लड़ाई है. आप दोनों की मेल हो गई है. सरस्वती के बिना लक्ष्मी नहीं मिलेगी, जिसको हम अंग्रेजी में नॉलेज इकोनॉमी कह देते हैं, पेटेंट कह देते हैं, ये कह देते हैं. सरस्वती के बिना और लक्ष्मी के बिना सरस्वती नहीं मिलेगी. आपके पास लक्ष्मी नहीं तो आपको कोई बताएगा नहीं कुछ, आप क्या जानोगे कहाँ से. ये दूसरी बड़ी एक इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज है मॉडर्निटी. और उसमें हमारे यहाँ हमेशा से, आज आपने बहुत सुना होगा सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स इज बीइंग टॉक्ड अबाउट. Sustainable Development Goals. Goal 3 is health, Goal 4 is education. We are all striving for education, and we use sustainability is the word. हमारे यहाँ हमेशा से था, हम ये करने के बाद नेक्स्ट क्या करते थे, धरती छूते थे. समुद्र वसने देवी पर्वत स्तन मंडले विष्णुपति नवस्व में प्रादुष, क्या कह रहे थे हम? ओ ओशन girdle earth and mountain breasted mother, forgive us for trampling upon you. हम कहते थे कि हम धरती के ऊपर बोझ नहीं बनेंगे, हम धरती को अपनी माँ मानते थे. वेस्टर्न मॉडल क्या कहता है, एक्सप्लॉइट करो. BHP बिलेटन सबसे बड़ी माइनिंग कंपनी है, बिकॉज वो सबसे ज्यादा एक्सप्लॉइट करती है. कोई और करता है, वो करता है. और अब हम सडनली चिंतित हैं कि हमने तो ये इतना ज्यादा खराब कर दिया कि एनवायरनमेंट सब खत्म हो गया, ये हो गया. और ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट है कि हमें हर चीज का, तो जो इन्होंने शुरू बात करी, हमें हर चीज का बैलेंस रखना है. कल्चरल डाइवर्सिटी का, आइडियाज डाइवर्सिटी का, कॉन्फ्लिक्टिंग का, और हमें समझना चाहिए कि इसका ये कॉन्सिक्वेंस होगा. What we are talking about was said by Malthus 400 years ago. 400 years ago, Malthus had said, population increases geometrically or exponentially, whatever you want. Land can never increase, especially irrigable land or fertile land cannot increase, and therefore there will be a crisis of survival. Why was Malthus proved wrong? Because chemistry came in the way. There's a person called Haber. He created fixation of nitrogen. See, what happens is when we all food that we eat has proteins or amino acids. Amino acids come from nitrogen. Fixation of nitrogen was done by either plants or animals who ate plants, and we were on the higher up of the food chain. We eat plants and animals or both or whatever. And therefore Malthus was right that if there won't be enough to eat, we won't survive. But Haber created this thing of creating ammonia from the atmosphere and then created fertilizers which expanded. We had the Green Revolution and all those things, and we moved on. But around 1970s, there's a set of people, Meadows and so on, they published a book called The Limits to Growth, in which they did the mathematical modeling and said eventually that will happen. And if you remember, a few years ago, Al Gore created that famous story, and now we are seeing that effect. Now we are seeing climate change in real terms. ये बहुत important है that we anticipate the future, we prepare for the future, and exactly what I'm trying to say, the role of these Bal Vidyalayas is to prepare these children for a future, and I want to tell you how that future is different. So when we were getting educated, if you were doing a certain program, the idea was that what your predecessors have learned and know, now you also know. So I said this very interestingly, that when I was doing my MSc Physics from 64 to 66, what I was taught, I could capture from the notes of my uncles who had studied from 1942 to 44. It was the same topic, same thing. My uncles were very meticulous note takers, so it was all in very good writing. Same diffraction, polarization, wave theory, this, that, everything, exactly. And in fact, I say this, but I also taught the same thing when I was teaching in the 70s. So, but that was the idea. The idea was that I also now know what they knew then. Today the goal of education is very different, and that is why these Bal Vidyalayas are very important. Today it is not about that you also know what others knew and are ready to find a similar place. So if you were an electrical engineer or computer, you will also become an electrical engineer, lawyer. No. What I have to do with the education of the children is, now you know, and the word skills has been used and competencies has been used, so that you can do what needs to be done to make the world a better place. Your seniors have made a mess of the world. Your seniors have made a mess of the world, and it is for you to rectify it. And you have to learn everything that needs to rectify it. Therefore, you don't have to be bounded by that curriculum, etc., that has been done, but create. I'll share with you some of the interesting features, and it may come as a surprise to many of you. When we were taught, it was a finite body of knowledge. In fact, if you've seen this Republic Day parade, did you see the various tableaus which were done? The one which won the prize was from the Education Ministry and Skill Development. It says from the Vedas to the metaverse. Now, obviously, this attracts me very much because I can go on and give you a talk about the metaverse. But when you say from Vedas to the metaverse, you have to start looking at what does it mean. If this is, it says from the tradition to modernity. But if you look at the Vedas, and many of you are computer oriented, I have been looking at calculating that. So there are 4 Vedas, then there is this thing. Of the 4 Vedas, Rig Veda is the largest, others are smaller. So I'm trying to estimate what is the size in terms of bits and bytes of the Vedas. So you have the shloks and you have this thing, and you know all this Rig Veda we all know, Ano, Bhadra, Kritivo, Yantu, Vishwata, and so on and so forth. So what is changing? And the entire Vedas is going to be a couple of kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes, whatever you want. A 3-minute video will be more than that. So we have to create people who are having more bandwidth for information processing. When you know all the 4 Vedas, you were a Chaturvedi. If you knew 3, you were Trivedi. If you knew 2, you were a Divedi. If you knew 1, doesn't count, but there is a Kiran Vedi. But the point is, if you want to master the new knowledge, you can never do that. You will never be able to take care of all them. You have to be able to know how to handle that knowledge. What are the essence of it? And I think somebody mentioned about, somebody said mathematics, but I want to use the word first principles and a scientific temper. Now, if you know first principles and a scientific temper, you will say all of these are derived things from those principles. So if I have few principles, which is what we are looking for, scientific temper is another very interesting thing. India is the only country where there is a constitutional provision related to scientific temper. It came in late, it is not in the initial draft of the constitution, but by 1976, under Article 51AH, all of us have a duty to inculcate a scientific temper, a spirit of inquiry and reform. So all these children should be asking questions, and we should be helping them build a scientific temper. Now, directive principles are not implemented, etc. in that sense, but it's an exhortation to all of us to be able to do that. And why this is important? Because in an uncertain future, when you don't know what's coming next, it is going to be these first principles. We could call this Sanskar Shashwat Satya. What is the Shashwat thing? That is the first principles. And this is why the new learning. Another very important aspect, and this applies not only to those but to everybody else. We are all going to lead very, very long lives. For me, of course, now the rest of life is a little shorter, but you are all going to lead very long lives. And this is a big change. Earlier you said you learned up to the age of 16, 18, 20, 22, and you worked up to the age of 60, and you were more or less dead shortly after that. Now it is completely different. So I have seniors to me who are, let's say, 10 years senior to me when I was at IIT Kanpur. They have drawn pension for more years than they drew salary. So they did their PhD, etc. IIT doesn't take you without a PhD or some experience abroad. So at 40 they became faculty. They retired at 60. They are 85 today, and they are still active and wanted. And they are especially wanted because they are few remaining people who know quantum physics and who can teach quantum mechanics to the world. So, and it's true for everybody else also. So unless you are singularly unlucky or you have mismanaged your body, you are going to live to be 85, 90 as of now. The younger amongst you are going to have, like Bhishma Pitama, Ichha Mrityu. You may not believe this, but if you look at, see, we have been trained to believe that death is inevitable. But on what first principles can you say death is inevitable? The only thing you can say, so far everything that we saw which was born died. Okay, so what does it mean? Now, those of you who know more mathematics, for mathematical induction, this is not enough. You have to say that for any n you can do. So, now if you are convinced that all of us who are born will die because so far all of us who were born will die, you need to reflect on just one thing. You throw something up, it falls down. A universal truth. It was a universal truth. What goes up must come down until 6th October 1957, when Russia put up a Sputnik and it didn't come down. Not only that, there are now so many satellites that parking in the campus may be easier, but putting a satellite may be more difficult. So it is going to be much more difficult to find a place for a satellite that you have. So 1957, the universal law that what goes up must come down. Why? Because we understood what happens. That you learn before you come to IIT. There's something we are taught called the escape velocity. And we calculated that it is 7 miles per second, 11.2 kilometers per second. So you know if you can throw a particle with that, it will not come back to Earth. But we didn't have the technology to be able to do that. Similarly, we are now being understanding how aging happens, how death happens. In fact, I was very amused when I read somewhere that in the US, a doctor is not allowed to fill the cause of death field by anything like old age or senescence or some such adjective. So I went to the internet, looked for those forms, and it is actually very insulting to doctors. He says in cause of death, don't write old age. His date of birth is given, we can calculate that, we don't need a doctor to say he was old. The computer will itself say what was the age. You have to say what caused death. And I will share with you, you'll find it very interesting. Death does not happen because of old age. Death happens in old age if it has not happened earlier because of any other cause. A very important distinction to understand. Old age is not a cause of death. Causes of death are heart failure, lung failure, kidney failure, your essential organs failure, and so on. So the death certificate there requires you to say which organ failed, next level, why it failed, and another, so up to 3 levels of the cause of which was the main organ, because many of these things are then supplementary. One organ fails and the others fail and so on. Why I am saying this is that while it looks inevitable, there is a finite number of causes of death. One of aging. In fact, now doctors are not even looking at diseases, they are looking at aging. Because aging causes a lot of diseases. If we can take care of aging itself, then we will be able to do that. And many of these things are now in common law. All educated people are now aware of something called free radicals and taking antioxidants to take care of the free radicals. Similarly, there is something which happens to your DNA. The end of the DNA is something called telomeres, and they've given a Nobel Prize for that. Somebody found an enzyme called telomerase which prevents the shortening of that thing and so on. So let us assume there are a number of such factors, N, 5, 10, 20. And once you do each of them, you have an answer. I'll give you an analogy. All of you have seen the functioning of a bank. In the bank, there are a large number of hours they call customer-facing hours. But the bank remains open after the customers are gone and does some bookkeeping so that next day they are ready with that. Same thing happens with our body. You wake up, you have a working day, you do whatever you do. During that, some of these things are happening. When you sleep, some of it is recovered. That's why we get refreshed after sleep. But some remains. What scientists are saying, we will give you medicines or maybe put nanobots in your bloodstream or something. They will go and do all the cleaning up so that you are ready next day at whatever it is. So the point is that when we talk about learning, we are talking about not learning for a job, employment, getting to IIT or getting a good job in a multinational after IIT, but we are learning for a long, fulfilling life. And this is what becomes very, very important. Therefore, the fundamentals that are being inculcated at the childhood level become that. Because if you are perpetually curious, and there is so much, nobody has been able to calculate how much time it takes to understand the whole world or the whole universe and so on. So this is a great initiative, has to be nurtured. The additional thing that I am suggesting is get children to become self-learners. The joy when a child is, even if you look at a child learning how to walk, how to run, how to play a game, as a child learns, there is expression of joy in this thing. And therefore, all learning is joyful. So this idea of saying that only some learning is joyful is not right. All learning is joyful. Sometimes we terrorize a person so that he starts being afraid of learning. That is a abnormality which we create. It is like finding somebody who dislikes ice cream. It will be very awkward to find that he hates ice cream, because normally we all love ice cream. Similarly, we all love learning. We create this thing sometimes by the conditions that happen and so on and so forth. The Bal Vidyalaya is an amazing thing, and I am feeling that if we fulfill some of these things, we will be seen in the whole world as examples of innovation in education. Today, he talked about using educational apps and so on. There's an app for mathematics which was used in Malawi, and Malawi is the third or fourth poorest country in the world. You can look up the tables. It's either third or fourth poorest country in the world, and they don't have teachers. That's why they started using the app. That app's success in learning has been such that now the UK wants to use that app for kindergarten, nursery children, and so on and so forth. This is why, and I tell this in the last point, I can go on and on. Learning is a global thing. There's a lot of mistaken notion we have that learning is local. That's why very often I see that word villages, this, that, whatever. And even our own constitution. When they wrote the constitution, education was a state subject. Today, learning and education is a global issue. It is no longer a state subject. We talk so much about national this thing, etc. There's a very interesting word in the global this thing. They say nations are becoming stronger, but the planet Earth has become an orphan. Nobody is taking care of planet Earth. And that is why what we need is a global education for planet Earth. And if they look further, it is going to be not only planet Earth. Planet Earth is being selfish. You have to look at the rest of the universe also. And I will leave you with this sentence. You may not believe this, but in 100 years or so, humans will be a multi-planetary species. We may not like it, but as per the latest evidence, we are all coming from Africa, and then we moved around and we took care of the globe, the planet. Hostile conditions, somewhere there is snow, somewhere there is too much heat, this, that, but humans with their intelligence have done this. We are soon going to be, soon means 100 to 200 years, which is very soon in a lifetime history, we will be a multi-planetary species. You know, Elon Musk already has a plan to put 1 million people on Mars. We go to the moon and come back. They're doing joyrides in not outer space, but at least somewhere in space. So you imagine that we have to now train these people, because they will say, oh, you know, he was my class fellow on planet Earth, and he was my class fellow on Saturn, and we and I and he studied together on the moon, you know, and so on and so forth. It will be very different. Just like your colleagues have moved to USA or England or Vietnam, I am very often surprised, because I am obviously much older. See, things that we have only seen in the atlas, Laos, Vietnam, you know, people who are actually working there. So I look after all this in Laos, I look after all this in Vietnam. That was something we just remembered in the global atlas, etc. So the future is very exciting, the future is very interesting. You're equipped with now much of the thing to live to a long age. Innovators are doing this to make the planet. As educators, we have to orient them towards that. So the famous thing of Kup Manduk, that living in a frog, living in a well, to living in the world, to living in a universe. And that is why, from times immemorial, higher education institutions were called universities. I think I'll stop now. I can go on and on. If there are any questions, comments, I will be happy to respond. I wish you all very, very well, and maybe we will meet in future. Of course, metaverse, they will put us in a couple of years, but in the rest of the universe, in a couple of decades. Okay, all the best. Any questions, comments, etc. you want me to say further, I'm happy to do so.
Any questions, please raise your hands.
I have been conditioned into non-questioning. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It's amazing. Sir, can you have you sit for 5 minutes?
Sure, sure.
So I'm just giving you a little bit more time. मैं आप लोगों को थोड़ा और समय देता हूं, बिकॉज हमारा आज का एजेंडा डिजाइन थिंकिंग वर्कशॉप है, तो हम सबको सोचना है और हम सब कुछ बातचीत करेंगे। और सर ने जिस तरह की शुरुआत की है, आई एम एब्सोल्युटली अमेज्ड सर एट योर wealth of perspectives that you're bringing, you know. And it's amazing, sir. I'll please, you know, take two things that you discussed, you know, the first principle and the scientific temper, you know. I think that probably can become the backbone of the CSC Bal Vidyalayas pedagogy and curriculum. Yes. Yeah, that's very true. In fact, I was looking at Elon Musk's new school that he has founded for his SpaceX, you know, and he has withdrawn his kids from the normal school and he's put them. And it's a very interesting structure. The school doesn't have any classroom. Kids can do projects together of any age as long as they're interested in it. And I completely second your thoughts in the future of the world, the way we are heading.
You can check it out on Google if you like. In the US, for a long time, there were schools which are called one-room schoolhouse. Because there was a sparse population, ज़्यादा बच्चे थे ही नहीं, और सारे बच्चे एक ही जगह आते थे। और एक टीचर, आपको अपने गुरुकुल की याद आएगी, एक टीचर, तो और वही टीचर हर क्लास के बच्चों को पढ़ा रहा है। वन रूम, उसी को लेके सलमान खान ने किताब लिखी वन वर्ल्ड स्कूल हाउस, and which is a very important book, which of course has digital, but even otherwise. So this Bal Vidyalaya is adequate for taking care of children about various things and so on. The structuring of the school, etc., happened when populations grew, and then we found it difficult for one person to cope with everything, and then they went. So, and there are US presidents who have come out of this one-room schoolhouse. तो ये कॉन्सेप्ट बहुत अच्छा है, इसमें आप बिल्कुल बंद करिए। सिर्फ ये है कि जो टीचर है उनका यूज ऑफ ट्रेनिंग और ऐसा ट्रेनिंग इन ओरिएंटेशन, उनका ओरिएंटेशन करना चाहिए कि जैसे हम लोग लाइफ में करते हैं। हम बताया तो हम 4 साल से बच्चे से लेके अपने उम्र के लोगों से 50 साल के सबसे बात करते हैं, सबसे कुछ बातें कॉमन होती हैं, कुछ अलग होती हैं, कुछ यूनिक होती हैं। यही काम उसको करना है। हमने जो एक मॉडल बनाया वो ये मॉडल ऐसा बनाया जो कि ऑपरेशनली आसान था, इसलिए कंप्यूटर वो सब काम कर सकता है। सो देखो जो काम ये करता था वो सब काम कंप्यूटर और ऑटोमेशन करेगा, लेकिन जो काम वो नहीं करता था, और ये मैं आई मस्ट ऐड दिस क्योंकि इस समय टेक्नोलॉजी में कई बार हो जाता है ह्यूमन वर्सेस टेक्नोलॉजी, तो मेरा कहना है हमको डिस्टिंग्विश करना पड़ेगा। व्हाट इज इट दैट ह्यूमंस डू बेटर, what is that technology does better? If technology is better, why will we get a human to do that? Let the technology do that. But what technology can't do and is essentially human is what humans will do. And for those of you who understand complex numbers, बहुत सारी progress होती है कि हम लोग complex number कर सकें, a plus ib. So there is one real part, one technology part, and a combination of that is what will make the right education for everyone.
I think that gives a lot of perspective for our teachers. One quick question I have for you, because nobody else is asking, and I have a lot of questions for them. So what is your thought on, now that new education policy is here, first 5 years of education have been put together in one slab, and Bal Vidyalayas, many of them that I have visited, I see that the first 3 years, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and 5 to 6, do you think they should be separated in different classes, or it's okay?
Learning is a continuum. ये segregation किया गया था because it was difficult to do that. See, in fact, on very formal level, Benjamin Bloom has a 1984 paper called the 2 sigma problem. So he acknowledges that most educationers acknowledge that the best education is a one-to-one between a teacher and a student, our Upanishad model. He said the problem arises when we want to scale it up, because giving one teacher to every student is too expensive. if you've read in the past, it was only the nobles, the lords, etc., who could say that we have a private tutor for a person coming. Now, the moment you say you are 40 to 50, then the quality of education decreases. And this is where the problem arises. That's why we had classes, even within the same class. In law school, we have section A, B, C, D, E, F. The class is the same. And the reason is, and now I will become more appropriate to IIT, so everybody may or may not appreciate. Suppose my teaching pedagogy model is one-to-one. Then if I have more people, it degrades. And it will degrade as 1 upon n. And we broadly say 20, 30 is fine, very good, you have only 7 or 10, but we say with n it decreases. If I don't care who is listening to me, and I say Mitra and start, then it is independent of n. So you can give it to million, 10 million, 50 million, whatever. But suppose my pedagogy is such that I engage with the n students that are with me. And now you know that therefore we are having n into n minus 1 upon 2 pair interactions. N minus 1 into n into n minus 1 upon 3 triplet interaction. Now that we have the social learning, you are going as power n squared, n cubed, etc. If the pedagogy is right, having larger number of people leads to better learning. MOOCs tried to do this, but MOOCs were passive broadcasting at low cost. But learning is more than broadcasting. Learning happens when the challenges that come are overcome. And the role of the peer group and the instructor facilitator is this, to see that the cognitive challenges which come when you go from one stage to another are resolved, solved, and you are able to move forward. So this is why a new model, and so don't get into the trap of making it like a regular institution. Make it, and if you ask me, extend it to grown-ups also. In the village, if there are grown-ups who are interested in learning, please come. और विद्यालय अलग होने की जरूरत नहीं. Because see, I may be a grown-up, but I don't know my ABC. I may be a grown-up, but I don't know decimals. I may be a grown-up, but I don't know conversion from centigrade to Fahrenheit, whatever. So it is the piece of knowledge that is important, not the age of the person. Now, if you don't know something for life, you will never be able to learn this because you were not at the right place at the right time when you were in class 8. That is not the right approach. So extend it to lifelong learning centers. You're not forcing anybody, only those who are interested are coming and they will get fulfilled and they will propagate that. I can go on and on. Carl Jung is a very famous psychologist. He has said very formally, where is the school for the second half of life? So we are educating you up to 20 years for you to be able to do this. But the second half of life is very different from the first half of life. You cannot live the second half of life on the same principles on which you live the first half of life. Therefore, push this together into a lifelong learning for a particular region because you want some humans to give that human part of the interaction. Technology is scalable, and instead of developing a lot of things of your own, find out what exists and curate them and tell them. That's where I use the word learning prescription. So a doctor, see when I was young, you went to a doctor, he actually made medicines, mixture, put a label, you were supposed to. Today he doesn't do. Everything is made by the pharmaceutical industry. He just tells you, take this. And even if you go to Google, you can see what are the equivalent medicines. So a learner will say, you want to know about this? Okay, watch this YouTube video, it is very great. After that, go and read this Wikipedia article. After that, watch this thing. After that, do something else. And this is why it is, instead of just a Google search, you have what I have given the name learning prescription. So earlier I used to say to learn this, but I said to learn this is not such an exciting thing. Prescription has this idea like medicines. I'm prescribing you something and you can do that.
Thank you so much, sir. I mean, not only that you can go on, but sir, we can go on listening to you. In fact, now I'm feeling like requesting Rishikesh ji, we should have a couple of day workshop with sir, where we host him and we can get some of the star educators and we listen to him, because I think lots of ideas are a very strong seed to where our nation needs to move. And I think your ideas would be very important.
No, I will go one step lower. When I was in early school, they said, take care of the pennies in the pound will take care of themselves. So I am saying, I don't mean to say I am international, but I don't look at the nation, I look at the individual. In fact, if you look at our religion, even if you look at Bhagavad Gita doesn't talk about the nation. जो मेरा जो फॉलोअर है उसको मैं ये ज्ञान दे रहा हूँ. मैं आपको चैप्टर 11 में विश्व रूप दिखाता हूँ. मैं कृष्ण को कहता हूँ, आई एम गिविंग यू स्पेशल थिंग विच इज लाइक हैविंग एन ओकुलर विथ एंड देन बीइंग इन द मेटावर्स. ये बाकी को नहीं पता, तुम्हीं को सिर्फ दिखा रहा हूँ. तो इवन भगवद गीता doesn't preach to the world that you मेरे अगर तुम वो हो तो मैं तुम्हें ये ज्ञान दे रहा हूँ. चैप्टर 13 में तो very interesting, we normally think of the Gita as only at times of death, and chapter 2 and chapter 13 is a manual for success in life. If you read chapter, I was very amazed because when I got to know all this, it says, what are the principles of success? And begins by first talking about Kshetra. Now, because I come from physics, I understand field theory and so on. So he says, everything is a field and what are you doing? And then he says there are various varieties. So first he says, you must choose the right place. Then you must choose the right tools. And you must keep at it, try again and again. And of course, finally he says you need divine grace. What he means is if you are trying to do something against the laws of nature, it won't work. So it must align to the laws of nature. Just as we all know, you want to say perpetual motion machine, it won't happen because it is against the laws of nature. So finally he says you must understand the fundamental principles, the second law of thermodynamics, this, that, but you have to try different tools. You have to have the field that you are looking at and continuous effort and so on. Anyway,
No, sir, it's a great joy. I mean, I don't know how to thank you, but this is the first time I have actually listened to you. I mean, I did meet you once earlier, but I didn't get opportunity to really interact. Yes, sir. But I look forward to. And thank you so much once again. And maybe I request Vivek ji to kindly escort, sir, back to seat. You know, to be. Apologies for laughing. So, अब मुझे लग रहा है कि हम लोग एक बहुत ही गहरे चिंतन से निकलना चाह रहे हैं. I mean, the kind of deliberations that sir took us through, I mean, they're very deep and profound, you know. उसको absorb करने के लिए और उस पर चिंतन करने के लिए हमें बहुत समय चाहिए होगा, you know, because he's coming from a very philosophical perspective. This is, as I shared with all of you, this is the first time I have listened to Professor Panta, and I'm amazed at his length and breadth of connecting the thoughts, you know, is from Vedas to metaverse. Probably that's the way to look at it. And the problem is that we cannot escape it. समस्या यही कि इस चिंतन से हम भाग नहीं सकते, है ना. मैं एक ब्रेक लेना चाहूंगा, उसके बाद आकर फिर हम कंटिन्यू करेंगे इस चिंतन को, है ना, क्योंकि हम लोग 1 घंटे से ज्यादा बैठे हुए हैं. विवेक जी कुछ कहना चाहेंगे 60 सेकंड्स के लिए. उसके बाद हम 10 मिनट का ब्रेक ले लें और फिर हम वापस हॉल में आएंगे.
Thank you so much, sir. Professor M.M. Pant, sir, Dr. Piyush Gupta, sir, Dr. Rishikesh Papanta, sir, Sri Shubhodh Misra, sir, Naveen, sir, all CSC Bal Vidyalaya owners and educators, I welcome you all on the behalf of the complete CSC family to this amazing training. सिर्फ एक छोटी सी बात आपसे कहना चाहता हूँ. आप सबने ये रियलाइज किया होगा, हालांकि ये छोटे बच्चे अपने माँ से ज्यादा ये बात कहते हैं कि मम्मा भूख लगी है ना. छोटे छोटे बच्चे, ये 3, 5, 6, 7 साल के बच्चे, भूख लगी है, सुसु आई है. लेकिन कभी आपने ये सुना कि छोटे बच्चे अपने माँ से ये कहते हैं मम्मा पढ़ाई आई है, पढ़ाई लगी है? सुना? लेकिन आप सुन सकते हैं, और ये तभी पॉसिबल है जब जिस बाल विद्यालय में जिस तरह का हम एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं, जो टेक्नोलॉजी, जो कलर, जो फ्लेवर ऐड करेगी, जो टेस्ट ऐड करेगी लर्निंग में, उससे बच्चे, और शायद आप में से कई स्कूलों ने ये रियलाइज किया कि बच्चे घर नहीं जाना चाहते, और आप 3 से 6 महीने सीएससी बाल विद्यालय की जो डायरेक्शंस हैं सेंट्रल टीम से या सीनियर मैनेजमेंट से, उसको आप इम्प्लीमेंट कीजिए. आपके बच्चे घर जाकर कहना शुरू करेंगे मम्मा पढ़ाई आई है, राइट. और ये बदलाव आपके थ्रू इस रूरल इंडिया में हम देखना चाहते हैं और भारत की तस्वीर बदलना चाहते हैं। आपका साथ चाहिए। थैंक यू सो मच। 10 मिनट के लिए हम ब्रेक करेंगे, सिर्फ 10 मिनट के लिए। बायो ब्रेक, ये टी ब्रेक नहीं है। जिनको बाहर जाना है, थोड़ा वॉशरूम यूज करना है, जाइए एंड प्लीज फटाफट वापस आइए। ट्रेनिंग इंपॉर्टेंट है। अगर आप में से किसी को फिट नहीं मिला